Hey there, Beggs here. Today I wanted to tell you about my new combo deck, Izzet Polymorph. The Polymorph combo isn't new, but this is my take on it. So, I had built a mono blue version of Polymorph about a year ago, and I've been working on it ever since. And over that time, they printed the card Transmogrify, and that bumped our combo pieces up from 8 to 12. So, the deck has gotten a lot more consistent, and as a result, I was able to effectively streamline the deck to be as fast as possible. Our goal is to try and make a turn 3 Emrakul. If we can't make it on turn 3, turn 4 is acceptable. The only way to make it on turn 3 is with a Colony Garden on turn 1, which allows us to make a plant token when it comes into play. Turn 2, we would play a Talisman for ramp. The talismans are nice because they both make blue. The Talisman of Creativity makes red for the Transmogrify. And on turn 3, with the third land drop, we have 4 mana available for a Polymorph or a Transmogrify, and a plant token in play from turn 1. And that gives us a turn 3 Polymorph effect to be able to find Emrakul to Aeon's Torn, which is the only creature in the deck. All of our Polymorph targets are Colony Garden making a plant token, Blink Moth and Ink Moth activate for the low cost of 1 colorless mana to make a creature, and Cloud Form manifests the top card of our library into a 2/2 flying hexproof creature, which is very clutch against opponents' removal effects. The Talisman are nice because they allow us to ramp into the combo a turn sooner, and if we aren't able to get the elusive turn 3 Polymorph activation, we can still do it on turn 4, and as a result, we can use our 1 mana counter spells to protect the combo the turn that we are finally ready to execute the combo. Along the way, leading up to that, our opponents are very likely to have a turn 1 Thoughtseize or Inquisition of Kozilek to disrupt whatever our game plan might be, and they'll very quickly find out that it's trying to make a Emrakul as soon as possible. So having early interaction to be able to stop that, like Spell Pierce and Swan Song, are, pretty much a requirement. It's a prerequisite to being able to play in the modern format, which is a very fast format. The 2/2 bird token they get from a Swan Song can be a little bit of a liability if you're using it early and you don't have your combo lined up yet. Like, you don't know what your turn 3 and turn 4 are going to be because you took a bad mulligan and you didn't have a choice. It happens. It's a variance of Magic, but typically when things are going our way and we happen to give them a bird token along the way, we get our Emrakul in play, and his Annihilator 6 trigger will clean up any stray permanents, lands, creatures, planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts. It doesn't really matter. The Annihilator 6 will clean it up. And stopping a turn 1 Thoughtseize with a Swan Song is typically going to be more important than worrying about them having a 2/2. In addition to the Thoughtseize effects, just Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt, Fatal Push, those are premier removal spells in the format, and our opponents are very likely to have one or all 3 of these effects, depending on what deck they are playing. And that's what makes our counter magic so important as well, including the 4 copies of Dispel on the sideboard. So we can go up to 12 copies of counterspell protection in our deck, depending on the matchup. As far as the rest of our main deck goes, I guess now is a good time to bring up Mishra's Bauble. They cost about 7 ticks a piece, so that's about $28, give or take, depending on the day you decide to buy them. I was able to pick them up from my personal account for around $5 a piece about a month ago, and that was shortly after the companion rule was changed, and they used to be $50 a piece for digital copies on Magic Online. It was completely outrageous. And when they crashed back down to earth at $5 a piece, I immediately was like, I have to get these. These are great. I'll play them in any deck I feel like playing them in. And as it turns out, I actually really wanted them for this Polymorph deck and I was very, troubled at the fact that they were $50 a piece, and I was seeing them in every deck, every opponent I played against, and it was like, I'm not spending $200. So very happy to get them for $20. And if you did not want to play these, you could just be playing any single blue mana cantrip. I personally would play Opt as opposed to Serum Visions, because Opt is instant speed, and you can hold up your 1 mana counter spells, and if they don't provide you with something to counter, then at their end step you can cast Opt and get a little deeper into the deck and, find that missing 3rd or 4th land, find the polymorph effect, find the creature effect like a Cloud Form or an Ink Moth, and get the combo on. Moving on to the sideboard, typically the biggest trouble you're going to have is with opponent's main deck removal, or let's say they board into additional copies of Path to Exile. They were only playing 2 main, and now they're going up to all 4 copies. So, things like that are going to be your biggest obstacle, and that's what the 4 copies of Dispel are for. That's your best way to interact with your opponent, whether they have their own counter spells, or if they have kill spells, if they have bounce spells. That's going to be your way to interact with their pieces of interaction. Every other matchup, like I touched on earlier, Emrakul is able to clean up its own messes, whatever situation it finds itself in. If it's able to attack and get in the red zone, the Annihilator 6 trigger is going to go off and clean up almost everything, and that alone is like a built-in way of it, progressing its own game plan of, if I'm allowed to attack once, I'm very likely to be allowed to attack a second time because of the Annihilator 6. So, assuming our game plan is progressing the way it's supposed to, we will have inevitability in that sense. And that kind of covers almost every matchup in the format. However, there is one matchup that we are a little less favored, and I would say that's the Tron matchup. And as a result, I personally have personalized my sideboard to make me better in the Tron matchup. We have 4 copies of Ceremonious Rejection, 4 copies of Damping Sphere, which also touches on Storm a little bit, but, it's mostly for the Tron matchup. 1 copy of Progenitus, and 2 copies of Void Snare. The Tron matchup can be really tough for us because they can have natural Tron on 3, play a Karn the Great Creator, uses -2 to go get a copy of Ensnaring Bridge out of their toolbox sideboard, and if they can play both of these on turn 3 with their 7 mana. And now we cannot attack with our Emrakul no matter what we do. The only thing we can do at that point is to hopefully draw into a Void Snare. We could technically be playing a Brazen Borrower, but those cost almost 18 ticks, $18 for digital copies on MTGO. And I'm sorry, but the alternate win con of hitting them with a 3/1 flyer would be nice, but not $18. That would make it the most expensive card in the deck for digital prices. And I also like to keep all of my support spells down to 1 CMC to hopefully facilitate being able to still play my combo while having 1 piece of interaction that only costs an additional 1 mana. So if I had exactly 4 mana for a Polymorph and a spare Talisman laying around, that's just enough for whatever support spells I was bringing in, like my counter spells or the Void Snare or the Ceremonious or the Dispel. So that's kind of the theme of the deck. That's what it's aiming for. The 1 Progenitus is nice because in addition to playing a Karn the Great Creator on turn 3, they could play a Karn Liberated on turn 3. And when that happens, they can just use his ability to exile target permanent. And it turns out he can exile an Emrakul if we manage to get one in play. They could say, oh, you're playing Emrakul? Okay, well, here's a Karn Liberated, exile the Emrakul. So, and that's in game 1. That's without even sideboarding, and they will have that in games 2 and 3 also. And they're just looking to do that anyways in every match. And that's why we're a little weak to Tron, because as big as we're going, they can almost go as big and just kind of deal with us. So if they manage to get a bridge in play, we can still put our Emrakul into play, we just can't attack with it. That's when you would want a Void Snare, because if you can bounce the bridge during your turn, attack with Emrakul, Annihilator 6 trigger happens, you hopefully will wipe away enough of their stuff that they can't even recast the bridge, and then you're clear to attack a second time, and it's academic, you win at that point, because that would be 30 damage, and I don't see them gaining enough life to survive 2 hits from Emrakul. The Progenitus is nice because it gives it protection from Karn Liberated. It has protection from everything, so they can't use Exile Target Permanent to hit Progenitus. In addition to that, if they have Surgical Extraction, Slaughter Games, or Lost Legacy style effects, and they name Emrakul, you'll still have a Progenitus you can bring in from the sideboard in games 2 and 3 that they jump through the hoop of getting to the point where they can take away your Emrakul, and then you go and cast Polymorph and you still hit something that's substantial and can win the game, and that's what Progenitus is for. So it plays double duty of its protection against a Karn Liberated as well as protection against a Lost Legacy style effect. So that's the sideboard, that's the whole deck. I personally like playing Goldfish Solitaire style combo decks that it almost makes the opponent look foolish for trying to play regular Magic when you're able to do something so egregiously powerful as early as turn 3 or 4. The budget of the deck, I would definitely consider this a budget deck. Emrakuls are only about $6. One of the more expensive cards in the deck. You don't need to play Mishra's Bauble. If you take these out of the deck, that's $28 right there. If you take that out, that's literally half the cost of the deck. So this deck is under $30 for the whole thing. This is the whole deck right here in a shopping cart on mtgotraders.com. And if you don't get the baubles, I'll just show you. Click, they're gone. If you just don't get the $26.79. So this is definitely a budget deck. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy playing it. It is a way to jump into the format. You'll get to play against all the other decks in the format. Burn, or a Hexproof, Bogles, Infect, Tron. You might see some more of the expensive decks like 4-color ramp control. So having a deck to get into the modern format, you'll be able to experience some of the other decks, and then you'll get to learn the format, and you'll see what you like. And then maybe you want to invest heavily into a more established Tier 1 archetype, and based on something you see played often, and you play against it often. And so this is a good way to get into the modern format, playing with something, I guess you classify it as janky. It's a cheap, competitive combo budget deck. Another way I like to consider it is, I describe it as, I can only ever get the power level of the ceiling so high. You can only push the ceiling so high on this. I would say it's tier 2 at best. So instead of trying to push the ceiling higher, which I don't think I can do, I try to raise the floor so it's only ever so bad. And then in that way, I feel like it's a more tiered deck. And I feel like I've done a fairly decent job of making this deck as streamlined as possible, as powerful as possible. The 1 mana counterspells go a long way to shore up the deficiencies, as well as protect the combo, protect the early interaction. And like I said, Modern is a very fast format. It's unforgiving, and especially with a combo that's easy to interact with. Once they see, oh, you're turning a plant token into an Emrakul, well, I'll just kill the plant token in response to the Polymorph. And it's very difficult once the cat is out of the bag, so to speak. And that's when the counterspells really, pull their weight. They are necessary. And the talismans provide you with that little bit of extra mana to be able to have your combo mana and 1 mana left for a Swan Song, for a Dispel, for a Spell Pierce. And so the whole thing, it's got a lot of synergy in the sense that the little bit of moving parts that it has, actually, it's just barely enough. It's impressive how it's able to put that Emrakul in play, and through removal, through hand disruption, and protecting itself along the way, and it's impressive. So, that's what I've been working on this for about a year now, and I'm happy with the list. I'm happy to share it with you today. I'm going to be posting some gameplay match videos. I'll add those to the description as they roll out. And thanks for checking it out. Don't forget to +1 the deck, and I'll see you guys in the next one.